I had this beautiful swatch come up on my Pinterest page and I wondered, could I use this to make a Minecraft build? Looking at the colors, a fair chunk of them aren't bringing up any obvious choices, but I decided to hop into a creative world and try out some options for each color. For the first color, I tried out exposed copper, stripped jungle wood, and white terracotta, but I ended up going with mud bricks. Part of the reason is I haven't built with them much since they came out, but I also wanted the block diversity that came with this option. The color of mud bricks is a little bit more vibrant, but it's in the ballpark. For the second color, I again wasn't able to find something appropriately dim. I needed something that has a dark reddish orange. A mix between acacia and mangrove would have been perfect. I also considered red sand, but I ended up going with red terracotta. The next color is a dark brown red, and every option that I looked at was either too brown or too red. I ended up deciding to use nether bricks with the red version sprinkled throughout. This one is probably the furthest from the actual color, especially with the purpley undertones that come from the nether bricks, but I felt like leaning towards red instead of brown would make the build more lively and interesting, while also fitting better with the red terracotta. I'm hoping that the red bricks help balance out that purpliness that comes from the regular nether bricks. The next color is a slightly green tinted gray. There's a decent number of gray options, but none that quite fit the bill. I decided to use both tuff and spruce leaves to emulate this color. Again, pretty far-fetched, but nothing else was sticking out as an option as I scrolled around in creative. Lastly, we've got this rich dark green. The best fit I found was seaweed blocks, which unfortunately have this giant white line through them. I don't think I've ever built with these blocks, so I thought it would make an interesting challenge at the very least. Now that I've built a less than perfect palette with materials I would never naturally use together, it's time to get started. I'm going to start with plopping my palette down here so that I can have a quick visual on all of it, also so that it's easy to grab as I'm working with that quick little middle click. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with this yet, so I'm just going to start putting things down and seeing where that takes me. The easiest way to make a building feel like it has depth is to have two slightly different sized shapes with each other, so I'm starting with that, a smaller side and a bigger side. And out the gate, I don't want everything here to be the mud bricks, so I need the mud bricks and the tuff to work together, even though they are a little bit contrasty in ways that I don't naturally like together, but I think we can make it work. I think the green will tie them together once we have that in there, so I need to just trust the process right now. I'm gonna try making this wall tough so that the other walls can be mud, and we'll see how that feels. Yeah, we're just gonna slap these walls in and see if it makes it feel better. Probably put a window back here, give it a little bit of visual interest. No, we're gonna do the bricks. I gotta keep it consistent. Okay, it's not doing much for me so far, but I think we need to put the roof on so that we can start seeing how that helps tie them together. So I've decided that we're gonna go ahead and do the pine for that. Actually, it's not pine, spruce leaves. I want it to be pine. It's spruce. Oop, fix that. I think I'm gonna want to put seaweed blocks up with this so that it kind of goes with it. There's such harsh colors with the bright white against the dark green that it's a bit difficult to use it organically in the build, but I think as that accent, it kind of works. Okay, it's definitely something. I need a fireplace. I mean, that's just instant cozy, so we're gonna put that in to see if that helps the build kind of come together. I feel like it shouldn't be either of the two other main bricks, so we're gonna use our third brick type and see how that looks. Out the gate, it's making me a little nervous, but you know, that's not it. Let's bring it in, give it a little bit more shape. Bit one lower here. Okay. I think that's better. That helped. Let's put the fire in so we can see that vibe. Yeah, let's put walls around it too, just to give it a little bit more depth. Make it a little bit taller to hide some of that fire. Okay. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. So we're gonna roll with that for right now, and let's work on this other side to see how that can help tie this together. I think I actually want this to be round, and I'm thinking more like a wizard tower. I think that whimsical nature will help it feel a little bit better with the interesting palette. I'm gonna swap this floor in too. I just realized I haven't used the red terracotta at all yet, so I think even if you don't really see it in the build, having that like visual reminder and kind of seeing it as part of the palette as I'm building will help me remember that I needed to be part of this, and we'll figure out how to sneak that in more obvious ways. I don't want to use it just there. So I'm building up this silo and thinking a pointy hat kind of vibe up here. We'll start with these. I'm kind of thinking that these seaweed blocks are like, they're like the supports for the leaves to grow on, you know? Like they give it structure and depth. And let's make this 2 wide, give it more of a brim. I find it easier to make it a proper circle if I do some of the like very edges and then count into each corner from there. I used to think circles were so hard, and they can be, don't get me wrong. If it's a giant circle, that becomes a hassle really quick, and if you miss one block, everything's ruined. But I've built so many of them now that especially these smaller circles have become like second nature, which is kind of fun to be able to just whip them out now. Okay, we made that nice and pointy. Okay, alright, it's a shape. This definitely needs more visual interest, so on the side here, I'm gonna put a like a balcony so that you could pop out there and look around. It feels like a natural, like that's a necessity for a little wizard tower, right? You can't have that without a balcony. So we're gonna stick this on here. Gives me an excuse to use the bricks to bring some of that red in. And yeah, we're gonna swap that. Yeah, okay. Swap that out. And yeah, okay. I think for the rails, I naturally don't want to use these, but I'm going to use them anyway. I'm going to put the tuff on there just because I want to make sure that I'm mixing these colors in throughout the build. I don't want it to be like separate, like completely separate sections of these colors, which speaking of that, I really want to blend this more in because these two buildings don't look like they go together. They look like two separate entities that happen to be next to each other. So I want to work some of this mud brick into the front of this. Let's actually make this 2 wide out the front here. Fix that up. And I think I got that wrong on the other side. Yeah, I'll fix that real quick. Okay. I think that'll help too. Gives me more room to play with how much is going on this front. Lets me have more room to build that depth, and I think I'm gonna actually slip this red terracotta in there behind those so that it's not as like bam in your face because it's hiding behind those walls. I don't know how I feel about the nether brick, but I want it to be here. I'm gonna do the mangrove door. I know it's not technically part of the palette, but I want a door somewhere, and the red, I think it does kind of like a in between the nether brick and the red terracotta, so I think it works. And I'm gonna slap a path in here because I think that'll help visually, just like I know I'm gonna want one and I can see it now, and we're gonna put some vines going up this. So I want it to be a little bit taller. I want it to go all the way up and over that. You can see right there, I didn't want it to like kind of reach into the, oh my god, I said it earlier. You know what it is. All I can think is patio. My little high-rise patio. We'll put a window in here. I think that really helped. It adds more green to the build. And let's use this as an excuse to add in more of that red terracotta to make sure that it has, you know, it can't be super prominent with how bright it is in the style of build that I'm doing here, but putting it in recessed like that gives me room to kind of have it subtly in there. I think I like that. And I think we're going to actually make those into the nether bricks so that it can kind of blend in together. I think those colors together can kind of meet in the middle to match more with the palette, so at a distance they'll look a bit more in line with what the goal was. Now I've just got to do this on the other window to make it match. And I need to, I'm gonna push this back. I don't like how flat this is, so we're just gonna re-grab those tough blocks and just set them one further back recessed in here to give it a little bit more oomph. And I do like that a lot better. I think that really helped. Okay. We're kind of at this awkward point. I know there's more to do, but I'm not quite sure what. I'm gonna put more in here against this wall. And just make this one match the other one. Okay. And I think since I'm using that mangrove door, I'm gonna also use the mangrove trapdoors for the windows. The color matches, especially in the context of the windows there, and I like the circles. I think they're just really cute trapdoors. I think generally speaking, if mangrove wasn't such a pain in the ass to get, I would use it way more in my survival builds. I also feel like I am underutilizing the seaweed. So, I mean, for right now, I'm just going to use it as a block to put the lights on, but I'm also considering if I want to have like additional supports going up through this, so we'll see. I'm gonna keep noodling on that one while I add lights on here, because lights make everything cozier. And I mean, even just right there, even with the sun shining still, like that's immediately 10 times cozier. So it'll be really cute to see this at night. I'm gonna slap some pots down. Since we have terracotta and this like the orangey redness, I mean, between the red terracotta and the mud bricks, like right between that is just regular terracotta, right? So these work super well for this build, and I'm going a little overboard with them, but I'm thinking it's a little like whoever lives here likes gardening and they have their pots and they like to grow things out of them. And I did decide that I'm going to go ahead and do it. We're putting in these extra supports. I think that they, like, it being on the roof kind of makes the white line, like, obviously it's still there, but it's literally 1 pixel wide, and so since you'll be seeing it at a distance, it kind of makes it less in your face. And you'll see a lot of it from below too if you're actually walking up to the build, but it gives it, I know I keep saying this, a little bit more depth, and so since the leaves are so much poofier, so obviously that only counts with the resource pack I'm using. But, you know, no one else is gonna be coming and viewing this, so it's fine. And I want to have a couple more exposed here too. I hid all of them, but I want to make sure you can see some of those seaweed blocks, that they're not just buried in the build, because it is like, it is part of the palette. It wasn't just use it in general. I want you to see it. So I exposed some of those. Gonna put some plants around, light it up. It's really just like smack out some details. I'm kind of just vomiting plants everywhere to see how that feels, and like really quickly it adds a lot of character and makes it feel more complete. Putting some dirt spots around and mud blocks to kind of like the paths that if you lived here that you would walk along. You know, you probably have like a little loop around the house if you have all these plants around it to water them and maintain them. I also want to, I feel like I'm still not seeing enough of that terracotta, so I'm putting in these little extra wall slats to expose that, and also gives me an excuse to work in that tuff into the tower, because as it stands right now, there's like none. I literally think there's not a single tuff block until that point, so I want some of that to make sure it ties together. I think it works well to have the tower be mostly mud with a little tuff, and then vice versa for the little squatty part of it's mostly tuff and a little bit of the mud bricks. And we'll slap some texturing on here to make it a little bit more interesting. I also want a little bit more lighting, trying to incorporate that in so it's not just random lanterns sitting on the ground. And there's just a little bit of more details to add here. I think yeah, we're gonna go ahead and I want more of the nether bricks to be seen, so we're gonna add a stripe. It also kind of helps break up. Right now there's just like a huge swath of mud brick from the midpoint down. So by adding this little strip on each side of the tower, it'll help incorporate that and break it up so it's not so much just mud brick and that's it from the midpoint down. And I'm struggling to get out. Okay. Get a look at this sucker. This is the point where it's hard to decide what else it needs. It's not done. I know that. I think let's add some lights in here and kind of complete the path. I want to add some railings to the side, and those leave an excuse to add lights on, so we'll do that. And that just kind of helps like lead you into the build, and you know, if this was theoretically in your survival world, you would need a path to it somehow to go to all of your other stuff, so we'll just stick that in there. Okay, gonna add some more plants. Just slap them all around, everywhere. I also decided to do, you just saw that little stripe added in there, that is mangrove signs. You can kind of see them there a little bit better. So just add a little bit more of that red color and give it a little bit more texture. And I decided this needs a boulder. So we're gonna build that. We're gonna do just tuff. I thought about adding other colors into it, but I decided to keep it from being like super distracting from the build. We're gonna stick with just the tuff. It's already got a bit of that going on with the, you know, the regular tuff and the polished tuff. They're surprisingly dramatically different colors. So we're just gonna stick with those two blocks as the colors for this to keep it from pulling away from the build. I want it to be like a subtle complement, kind of help ground it from like on the left we have the more tuff centered, and then the middle the mud brick, and then kind of forward and to the right of the tower we're gonna have this additional boulder here.
I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder.
And we'll add back in some plants. I think that's looking good. Okay, I think this needs trees, especially because they'll complement the like wizard tower hat a lot, I think. So we're gonna add in a bunch of these. We're gonna do a bunch of the big pine trees, and then once we have those in, we will smack in some of the baby pine trees. Do you guys, like, on your survival worlds, do you always do that trick with lifting up the dirt? Obviously sometimes it's nice to have podzol, but I oftentimes do not want that and would like to stick with the grass, so that's a little tactic I use for that, to avoid it spreading everywhere and having to replace it every time I want to cut down a big tree. And a million little baby pine trees. We're just gonna absolutely coat this sucker in them. Probably gonna let these grow naturally and just AFK for 20 minutes at the end here, because I don't want to go around and bone meal every single one. I did one and then realized that was a no-go. Gonna bone meal the ground a little bit. I realized after I went almost all the way around that that made a bunch of flowers that don't fit the build, so I went through and manually got rid of all of those. And I think after just some final little plant adds, we just about did it. So let's give it a good second here. I'll set on a time lapse and we can watch those trees grow. And there we have it, the final build. This was a really fun exercise. It got me to use blocks that I never would have considered using together. If you liked this style of video, make sure to leave a comment with what parts you liked or what parts you didn't like about it. I read all of your comments, and it really, really does make my day when you lovely people take the time to share your thoughts with me. I'll see you next time.